I've always looked at the comparison between the likes of like Bing as a search engine or versus Google.
Yeah.
Like if you go to Google, there's a search box and basically a button.
Yeah.
You type in the thing you want, you click. You go to Bing and there's like all the news. I didn't really give a shit what the Kardashians were up to until this point. And now I've just remembered how much I hate them and everything they stand for.
Yeah.
And now I've forgotten what I was going to search for. Which is probably not that important, obviously, if they could throw me off so easy. But there's all this distracting stuff. It's like I just came here to do one thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's your website. You
Yeah.
want me to do one thing, presumably. Why is it that you're making it hard for me to get to the point where I want to be or where I should be?
When a customer wants to know more about your business, one of the most common things they will do is search for your business on Google. Or if someone is searching Google with an intent to find out more about a certain product or service that you may offer, hopefully they'll come across your website. But what if your website is really rubbish? And what if they can't find you on Google? Welcome to another episode of the How to Do Marketing Show. I'm Jane Hilsden, founder and chief marketing consultant at Dragonfly Marketing. And in this episode, I'm joined by web developer Ollie Brooke, and we are talking all things small business websites. Ollie has been working in web development since 1998. He moved to Port Macquarie from Ireland in 2004, and he set up his own business here in 2016, developing websites for small businesses. I started the interview by asking Ollie what his superpower is.
I have a number of superpowers, but I suppose the one that makes most sense here is that I think over the years, I've worked out that my superpower is figuring things out. So as a kid, I used to like taking things apart just to figure out how they worked. And I used to love playing with Technic Lego and imagining things and then building them. And the same process applies with writing code and with strategically building a business, is figuring out exactly why things operate the way they operate and how they do it. So that I guess it's that kind of adage, seek first to understand. That sort of underpins everything. The more deeply you can understand something, the more effectively you can work with it. So I guess figuring out is my main skill that I bring to bear on all of this sort of stuff.
So then how does that figuring out transcribe to building a website? So coding is obviously something that's pretty foreign to anyone who's not a coder or a left brain analytical, techie person.
Yeah.
So that kind of, I guess, analysis or that technical side, like what are you figuring out with your coding? Like what's going behind the scenes when we're talking about the coding is obviously something that sits behind everybody's website. So what talk us through that?
Well, largely speaking, people aren't paying me to code. So that's sort of, that's sort of a meta skill, I guess. But in terms of what I've done, or what I'm endeavoring to do and continuing to do, which is a never-ending process, I guess, is figure out how to build the most effective websites that I can build. And so stating that as my goal of the thing that I want to figure out, everything I read and everything I take in and everything I do is subservient to that goal.
Okay. So say, for example, if a small business comes to you and says, I need a website, what's the process of figuring out that you do to make sure that you do give them that best practice website for their business?
Well, one of the questions, and I very rarely ask this question directly to the client, but the question is do you in fact need a website? And if, let's assume you do need a website, why do you need a website? What is it that you think that you want your website to do? And at least then I know roughly what their outcomes are that they want.
Yeah.
And then I can use that, I can then triangulate where they think they need to be versus where they are versus where I think they should be. So, and it depends on the context of the client as well. Like a small business client is a very broad type of client. So whether they want to be selling product online or whether they want to be getting calls through their website or whether they want to rank number one on Google for a particular set of search terms, whether they want just a refresh of a website or just something to say, contact form because it's an online business card almost sort of a thing, or whether they want blog or what it is. So that it's a matter of figuring out, well, what kind of a business are you running? Who are your clients?
Yeah.
And what is it that you need your clients to discover on your website about you in order to, push them closer to giving you that call or getting in touch?
Yeah. And I guess that's a nice segue into my next question, which is really, really to ask you, what are some of the strategic considerations that small businesses, and I completely understand what you mean in terms of, well, small businesses are in, every industry that you can imagine. But in terms of just say, I guess, a smaller business with a smaller budget versus, a corporate or a medium-sized business where perhaps they have a budget to build a behemoth of a machine that is their website. But for smaller businesses with smaller budgets, what are some of the strategic considerations? So you've touched on, well, what is it that you're trying to do with your website? Who is it that you're trying to actually get to interact with your website? And what is it that you want those people to do? Are those questions that businesses can easily answer when you ask them that? Like, do people know the answer to that when you ask those questions?
Often they don't. And I think, if I had to consider another secondary super skill, it would be, or superpower, it would be empathy. And I think that, say if I want something to look a particular way, I'm not a visual designer, I'm not a graphic designer, but in my mind's eye, I know what the finished product looks like, and I'll know it when I see it.
Yes.
I couldn't produce it. And I think that's the case for most small business owners. They know what they're doing in terms of running their business. They don't really know or fully understand how a website intersects with everything else that they do. So, like, one of the thought experiments is where you have a business owner, maybe they don't need to pay someone like me or anyone else to build their website because they can do it on Squarespace or Wix or any of these platforms. And that's fine, but that assumes that they have the time. It also assumes that they know how to articulate what it is that they do in an optimal way.
Yeah.
That website. Like, I see there are a few golden rules with websites in terms of how you structure them and what you should and shouldn't do. And you see them breached, but people just don't know they're breaching them. So there are lots of reasons that a small business owner wouldn't or shouldn't necessarily build their own website. But then the trick then for a web developer, not the trick, but the skill, I guess, for a web developer, and perhaps this is what separates some development agencies from others, is that more than just physically building a website from HTML, which is a pretty narrow skill set.
Yeah.
To understand what to build and why to build it. So I don't think that the small business owner really understands broadly what the point of the website is at all.
Yeah.
So it's to sort of walk them through that. I kind of, the model that I have adopted after significant consideration is that there are three types of users who will visit your website.
Great.
There are people who are already your customers and they just want your contact information. They might need your phone number quickly, or to get your address, or to send you a message through your website or your email or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's very easy to take care of. You just have a contact us link fairly prominently displayed, and that's job done for them.
Yeah.
The second group of people are people who have been referred to you by your existing clients.
Yeah.
They're really almost already buying.
Yeah.
You just need to convince them that you can do what it is they've been told you can do.
Yeah.
And then the third group are people who may need your products or services now or sometime in the future, but they have no previous interaction or exposure to you or your brand. And they're the harder ones to, I guess, get over the line.
That's right.
But you have to build a website in a way that it takes care of all three of those people's needs simultaneously, very cohesively and very succinctly, because while on the one hand it's easy to convert the people who are already your clients, you don't want to ignore the fact that you need to be speaking to them in favor of speaking to the people who you might have as clients in the future. So it's a balancing act between making sure that what you're delivering is a singular message that works for all three of those target audiences, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point. And I think certainly in my experience, I notice it a lot with I would do it myself. I'm guilty of it. We're all really guilty of I guess, not understanding that new people to our business, even existing customers to our business, not understanding that they don't have the full context about what we are trying to do and how we are trying to help them. And because we know so much about our business, we know every single, particularly a business owner, you know your business inside out. It's sometimes really, really easy to forget when you're writing copy or when you're designing what pages do I need on my website. It's easy to forget that people don't know what you know. And I think that's a really good point in terms of, sometimes when business owners are actually going down the process of going, okay, well, I need a new website. They've got that, is it unconscious incompetency, where they just don't know what they don't know. They know they kind of need to, and I say need in quotation marks, that they need to have a website. And they have a general idea of what should be on their website because they've visited a bunch of other websites. So they know there should be a homepage. They know there should be a button that says contact us, and a page that shows the address, and, a page that talks about us, etc. But as you said, it's actually layering that kind of foundation information with the more nuanced, yes, but, how is this business going to work for you? So, in terms of so if a business is in the, at the point where they've got a little bit of extra time, because we are recording this episode during the crisis of COVID-19, and there are lots of, small business owners who might have the time to actually rethink their website. If that is the case, from the strategic planning and the strategic considerations, what are some of the questions that they could start asking themselves now, or start looking at before they actually go and engage their web developer and copywriter and graphic designer?
I think one of the things to think about, and I struggle to do this myself, it's easy for me to give this direction to other people, but it's harder to apply internally, is what is it about your business that your existing customers really value? Like, I don't think that there's anything particularly special about the finished product that I deliver. Like, I think it's almost like a bottle of wine. I would challenge many people to tell the difference just on a taste test between a $30 bottle of wine and a $200 bottle of wine.
Yeah.
Like, there's really marginal differences between the two. So then if it's not the quality of the product that people are buying or people value, what is it? And that, to me, then forms the foundation of where you begin your conversation with those people who don't yet understand that, more than just building you a website, which you could do for free yourself on GoDaddy or Squarespace, as I said. It's more about, what are the other things that they're actually valuing? It's the relationship. It's my ability to articulate relatively complex concepts in relatively simple, easy to understand terms. It's the ongoing support. It's the can-do attitude. It's the nothing is too hard. It's the, the flat rate billing, the, not trying to spruik my services or whatever. It's all of these sorts of other things
that set you apart. So just to recap that, so what you're saying is websites could easily be perceived as a commodity. I mean, they are really a commodity. Website's a website is a website. As you said, anyone can build their own website. You can get a website that costs hundreds of thousands of dollars to produce. But for you, the superpower that your website promoting Ollie Brooke's business, Cloud Concepts, that actually has to, drive people's interest, or show people that it's not just the website you're getting, it's the relationship that you get, and the sense of the relief that you will get when you have a chat with me and you realize that you can just kind of talk about what you want from a website. I understand that, can interpret it, and then go away and build you that solution. Is that right?
Yeah. And in theory, that seems to be, to me, to be the main thing that people value. And when I look at the reviews that I get on Google and the testimonials I get sent through, it's always about how easy I am to work with and all of this sort of stuff. But the difficulty is how you articulate something that's like that, that's such a personal, subjective experience.
Yeah.
In a general way, without coming across as being salesy or disingenuous or contrived. It's like, if I put myself up and said, welcome to my wonderful world of website support, where we give you virtual hugs and hold your hand, and like, I don't feel like many small business owners are up for that. But that's the thing
but you do actually give the virtual hugs and endless support and lots of love down the phone. Well, obviously, a key way to communicate that to people is to have other people say it for you. So, integration of review sites that sit within your website would be, I imagine a great solution for that, so that you're not the one that has to be going, yep, we're awesome, we're so easy to get along with, we can interpret your brief, we can deliver what you need technically, and we'll give you lots of support, because all of your reviews are saying that for you. So then, in terms of an action for people to take away from this, before you go and see your web developer, understand what value it is that your small business gives above and beyond the features of your service. So your service might be a restaurant, it might be a truck company, it could be a furniture shop, it could be a financial planning organisation. But if you just talk about financial planning or trucks or furniture or whatever you sell, you're going to soon get lost in the sea of other trucking companies, other restaurants, other people that sell coffee, whatever. So you need to actually work out what that value is first, so that you can actually then communicate that to the website developer. What else do people need to consider at a strategic level before they start going, well, I want the about page and I want this image here and I want that there? What else can they think about from a business strategic point of view before they come and start talking to you about building a website?
I think strategically, I think it's worth looking at your website in terms of how it the part of the role it plays as your broader marketing mix.
Right. Yeah.
Like, there are not many clients that I have who very astutely monitor the source of their inbound leads.
Yeah. And like, when you say inbound leads, what do you mean by that?
When someone calls, how did you find us?
Yeah. So there's not a lot of businesses that, who are monitoring where their customers are coming from. Yeah.
There is one that does it. He's an electrician, and he's been a long-term business mentor and client of mine. I'll just give a shout out to Dave from Neverlake, because he'll never see this. He doesn't do LinkedIn, but he reckons that 80% of his clients are repeat business.
Yep.
And then the other 20% is referrals, Google, Yellow Pages, not so much these days, radio ads that he does. But right. he reckons that Google and the website, largely they go hand in hand.
Yeah.
He reckons is probably 10%.
Right.
But, that extra 20%, that's the make or break. And the 10% can actually be the make or break. Without that 10%, even though it's only 10%, without it, the business fails.
But as you said, he measures where his customers come from. So he can emphatically kind of say to you, 80% of my business comes from referrals, 20% comes from, or 10% comes from Google. And when you say 10% comes from Google, because obviously people have got to put the website address into Google. Now they're either going to put the website address of, and in this case, Neverlake Electrical, into Google because they've heard of it from somewhere, or they've heard an ad on the radio or whatever. Or what's probably more likely, they're going to actually whack in the search term electrician Port Macquarie. So he's able to, so that's when he's saying Google and website, that's what he means. And he's able to track that, because there are tools, and I'm going to ask you about this later, there are tools that can help you actually track where that Google activity, or even where some of your other activity is coming from.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how it fits in. So you said to assess how it fits into your broader marketing mix. And I think that's actually a really good point, because your website itself is not a marketing, it's an asset. It's an asset to your business, but it's not a working marketing dog, if we put it that way.
Yep.
You know, your website is there. It's pretty passive unless someone goes looking for it, or unless you're driving traffic to it. Your website is just going to sit there and nothing's going to happen. There's a lot of businesses that I've seen along the way who will just launch a website and then dust their hands, job's done, cool, got the website, done marketing for this year, let's move on. Your website is not going to be seen by anybody unless you're actually driving people to it. So when you're considering that website, and as Ollie's saying here, work out how that's actually going to fit into your broader marketing mix. And certainly from my from my experience, how we are integrating websites into a broader marketing mix is we will drive people from Facebook, for example. A really classic example of this is that we will have a blog page on a website. Let me just go for an example here so I can articulate it easily. So professional services site, we write regular blog posts. When we write those blog posts, they go and they sit on the website themselves. And then we actually take those blog posts and we post those out via social media channels, depending on, where the target audience is for that client. Could be Facebook, could be LinkedIn, could be Twitter, or whatever. So then someone actually sees that blog post in Facebook or LinkedIn, clicks on the post to read the full article, and then gets sent back to the website to consume that article within the blog page. Hopefully, when they're on the website reading that blog post, they might actually start ducking and weaving around your website to find a little bit more about you. Mm-hmm. So whether that's going to the home page, or whether it's going to the About Us page, which it typically is, whether it's going to your services and your products page. So when you're actually considering that website, think to yourself, well, how am I actually going to drive people to it? Will it be, if you're going to run a print ad or a radio ad, you're probably just going to send people to the actual address itself, the home page. So what are you going to do on the home page to make sure that you're taking that visitor on the journey to contact you or find out more about you or access your offer? Is that what you mean by that?
Yeah, and it's that, and it's also like a conversation I had this morning with a client whose website I built probably 2 years ago, and during the course of this crisis is now undertaking some work that should have been done by her own admission many years ago. And this is sort of, we can touch on this later about how you can take advantage of your website more effectively to deal with this current situation that we're in. But we just got to talking strategically about what she's doing and about the services I do and don't offer. Because she was saying, I would struggle to validate the cost of the website that I had commissioned you to build, because I don't know necessarily how much benefit it has been to my business. Right. And when we talked and expanded on that, I was like, well, arguably for what she's doing, which I would see, this is where I feel safer, because I'm not engaged in outbound sales. So someone comes to me asking me to build a website, I haven't convinced them that they should get me to do it, and then 2 years later they're like, well, that was a waste of money.
Yeah,
they've come to me looking for this. So I said, that's why I don't want to be convincing people to buy things that they don't necessarily by default want to. I'd rather
them be motivated to come and But so hang on. So she came to you and she said, I really, in order to update my website, I'm struggling with the idea of assigning a value to this to this activity because I'm just not sure how much value having a website done 2 years ago actually gave to my business. Is that right?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So the business itself is a small takeaway, predominantly cafe.
Yep. Yep.
So I don't think that it was necessarily, like, I know there are many cafes that are in that same category, and I wouldn't think that they would really need a website. I think that type of business is served better if they just focus their time and effort on Instagram and social media channels.
Right.
I don't see that there's a compelling need for that takeaway cafe to have a website. It's not as compelling as it would be, say, if you were a veterinary clinic or an electrician. You know, it's.
And why do you think that? Why? Why do you think it's not important for them to have websites?
It's not necessarily that I don't think it's important for them to have websites, but I will answer that question. It's more that I don't think it's as vital to how they roll as the electrician, or as, like, I don't think people are Googling by default. So I'll explain why I think they do benefit from it. And the answer I gave to her is because you do have now a presence on Google. So when someone comes to town, and Port Macquarie is a heavily tourist-driven town, when someone comes to town and they're looking for a cafe or they're looking for a boutique, and they punch that into Google, your website is there, and you suddenly have a presence in that person's mind, and they find the thing they're looking for. But for the likes of you and me, who already live in the town, who are also the people who probably provide, not specifically you and me, but the locals probably provide 70 to 80% of that business's revenue over the year.
Yeah.
The website isn't essential. Like, we're not jumping online before we go into town on a Sunday morning going, I wonder what cafes. You know, we already know
we already know which ones to go to.
So in that regard, like, I don't know, you know, I could name 3 or 4 businesses that I visit regularly that are in that category, and I don't really even know if they have a website. In fact, I don't think that many of them do. I've certainly never bothered to feel the need.
No, you're right. Yeah.
So from that perspective, it's not as essential as, say, I'm looking for an electrician. You know, these guys don't even have a website. Like, I have no idea whether there's, you know, some dodgy bloke's going to turn up to my door in a pair of thongs and a VB, you know, muscle top.
Yeah.
Or whether they're a professional operation and I can reliably send them to, you know, my elderly grandmother's home to fix a fan, you know.
Yeah.
That's much more important. They have a website.
Interesting perspective. Interesting perspective. Because I would say that, I mean, I think I generally do say, not that I must say I haven't really advised a lot of cafes around this, but I would say the presence of a website just to actually prove that you're a thing is important, even if it is just like a one pager. Now, a lot of those businesses, if they have actually got, and a lot of those businesses typically do have a really, really good Facebook page. So a lot of cafes that I know, though, locally, you know, some of them, you're absolutely right, don't have a website at all, but they are super proactive with their Facebook page. So if I was to Google them, their Facebook page would come up as the #1 listing. And if they've filled out their Facebook profile sufficiently for me to get all the information I need, there is absolutely no reason for me to actually then go and check out their website on top of that. So I can see what you mean. I guess in terms of if you are a cafe and you are starting up, you do need some sort of digital presence of some sort, whether it is that Facebook page. And I'd say Facebook over Instagram, because, you know, if people are searching, well, on their desktop or whatever, generally Instagram won't necessarily appear, but Facebook is the second biggest website after Google. So if you're not going to have a website, make sure that you have a Facebook page. And in terms of that Facebook page, it's really how much activity you put behind that, and make sure that you fill out all the fields, you know, your address, your phone number, your hours of operation, your menu, you know, put all your keywords in there, just as you would with a website. Make sure you know, really fatten that up with lots of content, and make sure you're posting regularly to it, because otherwise even that might not come up in Google. And, you know, I think the general rule of thumb, if I'm right, Ollie, I don't know, you can tell me, but is if you're not on Google, you don't exist.
Yeah, effectively, more and more that is the case, and it is difficult, because I think, like, one of the books I read recently, Jim Collins, Great by Choice.
Yep.
Paranoia is one of the qualities that he cites most of the successful business leaders have, and it's this constant. Bill Gates does it, like they all do it, like looking for what is it that could happen that could render your entire business model useless.
Yeah, right. Yep.
So I think, you know, for me, there is a particular set of features and growing set of features that are bring more and more into question the validity and necessity to have an actual website. One of those is Google Business Listings.
Yeah.
And the increase in zero-click searches, which for the layperson is when someone searches Google, but they don't click on anything that takes them away from Google. So they click to call straight from the Google result.
Yeah.
Or they click directions, or they click to see your opening hours. Like more and more Google are removing the necessity to have websites for basic functionality. So you think, well, okay, you know, maybe some businesses don't really need it. Certainly startups, like certainly don't think there's any, I find it very hard to justify a startup spending thousands of dollars on a website.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, maybe after 2 or 3 years, but the thing is, once you've established those social media profiles and that got the traction, you have an understanding then of what it is that if you do need a website now, what is it that I can do on my website that I know I can't do on these social media channels that I've been trying or wanting to do. You know, maybe I can't sell merch as easily, and we sell a lot of merch in the shop. We're now going to make it available online. Whatever those things are, you can have a better idea, better understanding. But just there are a lot of businesses that just by default spend big and think that, you know, we've got to get this, we've got to get that, and
because they think it's the marketing kind of checklist of website tick, set up the Facebook tick, got the logo tick, business cards tick. And you know, like 10 years ago, like for now, like business cards for me seem redundant for most for a lot of businesses. You know, I have them, but I never know where they are, and I can never give them to anyone. But, you know, if we'd said that 10 years ago, there's probably people who would, you know, turn over and die. What do you mean? Like, your business cards are the first thing that you get as a business, you know, whereas these days they're redundant. I find it really interesting that you make that point about the Google business listings. And just for our listeners, you know, because I know sometimes when I talk about a Google business listing, people get it confused because they're like, oh, do you mean the listing of my website in Google? No, two separate things, aren't they?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
What's the difference between them?
So the Google business listing is a asset that's owned and controlled by Google. Yeah. That you can claim. Yep. And modify it and update. But it's the most common positioning for it is off to the right of the search if you're on a desktop. Yeah. And it'll have a little map above it, maybe a view from the street of your premises. Yeah. And then if you've taken ownership of that, which is pretty straightforward to do, if you take ownership of that, then you can upload your own imagery and logo. You can set your opening hours. You can add descriptions. You can do special offers. Without wanting to shoot myself in the foot, you can actually build your own website within that. It's terrible. Don't do it.
I didn't even think of that. Yeah,
you can do all that. I mean, it's again, that just comes back to the, you know, I theoretically could fix my own car, but I would soon be looking for a divorce lawyer afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's right. And I must say, what I've noticed about Google business listings is because for our clients, we collect a lot of metrics each month. One of the metrics that we collect is from a software tool called Google Analytics, which I think Ollie will touch on soon. And basically that Google Analytics will, you know, tell you how many people have visited your site, and it can tell people how, you know, it can tell you how people are, what pages they're accessing, how they're interacting with the site, etc. But we also monitor their Google business listings, and Google business listings, while it certainly doesn't give you the detailed insights that Google Analytics does, you can actually see how many people viewed your Google business listing, how many people clicked through on the little website button, how many people clicked through on on the call button. And then it will tell you, you know, what days of the week you're getting more calls, etc. And I have noticed that, yes, you now can add a website. You can add photos to it. You can add description, opening hours, etc., etc. And the most important thing is when people are actually searching on their mobile for your business, the Google My Business listing will actually be the first listing before your website that even appears. So obviously, if you've got a website, you can list that on your Google Business listing. But Google are pushing that listing, the Google Business listing, to the absolute forefront of its real estate. So I think that's a really good point. But as you said, and it depends on what the business is. If it's a startup business that needs a lot of explanation, a lot of convincing, a lot of, you know, and they're selling product or service or whatever online, they need landing pages, etc. You're going to need a website. But for a cafe, perhaps, where all you need to do is give your customers the assurance that you are actually a business, that you can pour a good cappuccino, and that your location is in X location, a Google My Business listing or a really well filled out Facebook page might just be the ticket to do that.
Yeah,
Ooh.
yeah, and it is interesting to see what that trajectory looks like in the long term from as a web developer and someone who's potentially built a business that could soon be, you know, potentially be pulled out from underneath me. I don't think that's a reality. I think that you know, there's still definitely a need for that, but it is interesting to consider what maybe Google's long-term strategy is.
Yeah.
Doing this, like, why is it that Google are so averse? Maybe you could say they're averse to sending people to websites, or maybe they're just consistently doing what they've always been doing, which is working on delivering the best experience for their users, so their users keep coming back, and suddenly Bing haven't deployed this feature, and then Google's just out of the game. Because I suppose Google come from a place where they weren't a player in a very heavily dominated search engine world, and this is, you know, in the late 90s, early 2000s, when Alta Vista and Yahoo were the very big and dominant players, and Google just out of nowhere took them out of the game. And Yahoo's now delisted as a public company. So,
wow. Yeah.
And that is basically single-handedly achieved by Google. So they are acutely aware of the power of disruption.
Yeah.
The ability for them to potentially be disrupted. So I don't think they necessarily got a vendetta against web developers.
No.
But I do think that they focus heavily on how to provide the most positive user experience, and that, you know, that's great. That's what they're doing.
That's what keeps you in business. 100%. All right. Okay, so now this is where you've got to be really honest and don't hold back here, Ollie. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see? Well, it doesn't even have to be small businesses, any businesses. We can all learn from these mistakes. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see people make when it comes to their website?
One of the biggest ones that I see is, like, there are things that are bugbears of mine that I think poor user experience, which is abbreviated to UX, is one of the biggest ones.
So talk us through a poor example of a poor user experience.
If I'm on my mobile and I type in so this is an experience, but I won't say the specifics. Type in the name of a gelato store. And their website comes up on my phone, and I tap the phone number to call them, and nothing happens. I'm like, dude, come on. It's not that hard to make that a clickable thing. Like, it's really. And
then you start getting frustrated because you're like, and you start banging the screen. Like, come on. Come on.
So now I'm going to hold the mouse down, my thumb down to copy that phone number. And like, Google even does this. Like, you can hold down that phone number on an Android and probably on iOS, and it'll give you the option to call it. Like, your operating system will identify that as a phone number. So they're like compensating for the ineptitude of web developers. They've built software to take care of the users because the web developers haven't done it.
The web developer hasn't. So totally annoying experience. What else? What else is another annoying user experience?
Lots of competing moving elements on a page, the
Yes.
lack of clarity,
Yes.
you know, different and inconsistencies in layouts, like, and inconsistency, brand inconsistencies, where you've got big blocks of color that have nothing to do with the brand at all, and you can just tell that, you know, Stevie Wonder perhaps has been put this together on the side, and just things like that. That it's like, so no one really knows what the goal is here. Like, we're not being clear about where we want the user to click or what we want the user to view.
Yeah.
And that's, I think that's the sort of thing that comes down to someone that knows how to put a website together from a technical perspective, but doesn't really understand why they're doing it or what the outcome is.
Yeah.
I've always looked at the comparison between the likes of like Bing as a search engine or versus Google.
Yeah.
Like, if you go to Google, there's a search box and basically a button.
Yeah.
You type in the thing you want, you click. You go to Bing and there's like all the news. I didn't really give a shit what the Kardashians were up to until this point. And now I've just remembered how much I hate them and everything they stand for.
Yeah.
And now I've forgotten what I was going to search for. Which is probably not that important, obviously, if they could throw me off so easy. But there's all this distracting stuff. It's like, I just came here to do one thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's your website. You
Yeah.
want me to do one thing, presumably. Why is it that you're making it hard for me to get to the point where I want to be or where I should be? Like, talk to me. Like, I think one of the things that doesn't happen is there's lots of pontificating about what we stand for, all this sort of stuff. So I don't really care necessarily what you stand for at this point in time.
Yeah.
I care about whether or not you seem capable of solving my problem. And if you're making me read volumes of content to find this out, like, I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah. And I think that's a classic case of where the business owner's so caught up in their objectives of, well, we have to let them know that, you know, we're the leader in this and that we stand for this. And, oh, I've seen somewhere that we need to have a sustainability clause. Right. We'll put that on there and make sure people know about that. Oh, plus we've got this product now that we want to sell. So we'll make sure we put that on there too. And they forget that it's that the user doesn't, as you said, really give a shit about all of that stuff. They've come to your website for a specific purpose. It's your job to make it the easiest journey as possible for them to actually access that. You know, you hear a lot in the world of marketing about businesses making it really hard for customers to buy. You know, your website is an absolutely prime example of where you can make it really difficult for your customers to buy if you're so, you know, obsessed in trying to get all your messages and all your products and make sure they know about this. The other thing I think there too, which is really important, is understand who your target audience is, because, you know, if your target audience is millennials, well, they kind of do like to have a bit of a snoop about to see what you stand for and, you know, which charities you support and, you know, are they going to feel good and wholesome about that purchase? So if you know that they're your target audience, well, make that information available. Gen X, though, however, couldn't give a shit. We just want to go straight. You know, we want this product, we want this service. We've probably heard about it from somebody else. We're already there. We just need to know the details about the value we're going to get and how we actually go about buying this service. Yeah. And that's a really rudimentary, you know, sweeping statement, but an example.
The other thing that irks me a lot, and I benefit from being very technically savvy, and as a result, no offense to my wife, but she doesn't need to be technically savvy because she knows I can just do all this stuff. So it's interesting to watch her trying to do things on websites, and particularly around booking activities for our children.
Yeah.
And the language that she can sometimes produce while struggling to book something online. It's like, if you cannot deliver that booking process smoothly online in 2020, and you haven't engaged someone who knows how to build a form that's mobile responsive that you're not having to pinch to zoom in and out of, like, just don't do it. Don't offer that service. Like, so you're doing your business and your brand a disservice.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really, really good point. Now, one thing that people won't know about is all the stuff that goes on in the back end to make sure that their website is visible to Google, so that when people go, I need an electrician in Port Macquarie, Google serves up their page as one of the options on page 1. So what are some of the mistakes that are made with the back end and optimizing your site for search?
So we both commented on a post that Adam Franklin put up yesterday, which was an SEO PDF overview.
Yeah.
That really covered everything, and that being very recent, I probably refer to a few points within that. But there's a hierarchy of information on your website when Google looks at your website. So Google's not a office full of tens of thousands of people who are looking at all the websites and taking down notes about what they think that website should rank for. it's a facsimile of that in effect. But what they're basically trying to do is figure out, what is this page about?
Yeah.
And what is it, in order of the thing it's mostly about. Also, what else is it about? Also, what else is it about? But there is a way for you to communicate that to Google directly and indirectly. And the direct way of doing it is to recognize that there's an order of information, and you've got your page title, you've got your URL of your page, you've got heading level 1, you've got the volume of text on the page, but that's a grayer area. But there are lots of specific ways for you to articulate that information to Google.
Yeah.
Which can be subject to abuse by people who do SEO. So
yeah.
Google are a very, very smart organization.
Yeah.
And as much as it has been possible in the past and is still possible today to trick Google into ranking your website for terms that perhaps your competitors should be better ranked for,
yeah,
it's still possible to do that. Google is like the casino. The house always wins. Like Google will evolve and adapt to mitigate those tricks. So while you can technically instruct Google about what your website's about, they get better and better, and they can go, right, well, you say it's about red buckets, but we can see clearly this is about yellow buckets, and you just want to rank for blue buckets because they sell for more money, and you're,
Yes. Yeah.
So I do all the technical stuff, and I make sure the heading 1 occurs once, and it includes the keywords, and the page titles have the keywords in them. But what Google say is, don't worry about that stuff. You just focus on building a website that's good and easy for humans and useful for humans, and we'll take care of the rest. And sure, you wouldn't ignore the ability to use a keyword, but I know of companies who will say, a page that says they want to rank for me. Freudian. They want to rank for web design Port Macquarie.
Yeah.
So there you Google web design Port Macquarie, up comes their website, their page, and it says, the title is Website Design Port Macquarie. We design websites for businesses in Port Macquarie who need websites designed in Port Macquarie. Our website design service in Port Macquarie is blah blah blah, and it's like
it's bullshit.
But it still works, but it's a matter of time before it doesn't. So don't do that sort of stuff, even though that sort of stuff technically does work. A human reading that is like,
whatever.
Who in the hell talks like that?
Yeah, exactly.
You got me in the door, but you've got the most beautiful window dressing, and I walk in and actually this place stinks. I'm getting out of here as quick as I can.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, and that's where I guess subconscious, all of the stuff that marketing does happens at a subconscious level. So that kind of stuff is one of those little notches that would just be knocked back a bit from somebody's level of trust when they're reading that, going, what on earth are they on about? They've said website Port Macquarie about 10 times. This is annoying. Okay, great. Now, in terms of measurement and optimizing their business website, so we've mentioned Google Analytics and the insights that are available on Google Business. How do you suggest that businesses actively measure how their website is performing as part of their business? So not on its own, because we don't want to necessarily understand how it operates on its own unless it's its own revenue driver. How's it actually adding value to the business? How do you measure that?
there is the adage that 50% of marketing budgets are wasted, but we just don't know which 50% it is. So it is difficult to accurately measure. And I am not someone who's ever comfortable not knowing why something is the way it is. So I work quite hard to develop deeper insights into why some websites perform well and why others do not. And I conversely know that there are many, many, many businesses out there who provide services in this space who take advantage of how muddy those waters are and charge whatever they want, because they know that even the experts don't really know exactly how you measure this stuff effectively. So there's no way that Billy Bob from, that fixes tires is going to have a clue.
Yeah, because they just bamboozle you with all the reports. They bamboozle you with all the reports. Here's the bloody 20 pages of, analytics and graphs and pretty pictures and numbers, and the amount of businesses, you're absolutely right, that I've spoken to that go, I don't know, I get a report, but I have no idea what it means.
No. So, I've seen it used as a sales tactic. I've seen it used as a sales tactic by a directory based business who has presented graphs and 17,000 unique monthly searches, and the business owner's going, sweet, that's good.
Yeah.
They're not searching, they're not looking at your website. That's not, I can see the numbers are looking at your website. It's not 17,000, I'll tell you that.
That's right. Exactly.
So it's out there, but it's so that being the case, it's like, what is it? How do you work that out?
Yeah.
Like I had some technical issues the day before yesterday that I resolved, and one of them wasn't fully resolved. And my client called me this morning and said, someone said that they couldn't load our website.
Yeah.
And what was the book that I read? I think it might have been 0 to 1, but it was like these people were talking about this product that they built, and they had all these subscriptions and all these people paying for it. And then they found that the product had broken. It was a digital product and it was broken, and it had been broken for 5 days, but no one had noticed. And the guy was like, thank God for that. But then he was like, shit, no one noticed.
Yeah.
Far out. Like, that's not good. So, if someone does call up and say your website's not working, that's a sign that your website is working, in that, people want to use it.
Yes.
And people do comment and leave feedback to a number of clients. So I'm not privy to that feedback directly, except for the odd occasion where my client will say, one client who owns a physiotherapist left me a testimonial months and months after I'd relaunched their existing website. And he said, we get regular feedback on how easy our website is to use and how simple it is.
Great.
So that's kind of what you want. And it's not even necessarily that you'd get, so it is useful to obviously be able to get metrics around actual usage, but it's also, it's good to know that your website, if nothing else, paints your business in a positive light.
Yeah.
So even if no one clicks to call or clicks to contact you or downloads your thing or whatever, they've had a positive experience with your business through your website. So that is intangible.
Yeah.
But tangible values are, so, I went back to my bugbear, which is not having a clickable phone number if you have a phone number on your website.
Yeah.
I can, within Google Analytics, trigger particular events to be recorded in Google Analytics every time an action happens. So I have triggered an event when someone clicks to call. So that's a contact. So I send that data to my clients every month. And I said, your website had 57 conversions this month. And a conversion is either someone clicked to call you, sent you a contact through your website, or they clicked your address to open it in Google Maps.
Yeah.
So this, I think, helps business owners understand that, yes, we are getting leads through our website. And if we didn't have a website, maybe those people would have found our number another way.
Yeah.
But that's by the by. That's a separate conversation. But the fact is that people are making use of our website. We know they are, even if we're not asking people how they found us when they called.
Yeah.
We're being told reliably, hopefully, that people are finding us and engaging with our website and contacting us. And that information, and sending that information out, giving the owners regular updates of how their website's being used, makes them go, shit, I thought like 3 people a week might be on our website, but it turns out we've got 250 visits in the last 3 weeks or last 4 weeks or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, wow, maybe we should pay a bit more attention to this asset that's been sitting there for years lying dormant because our previous developer we only heard from them every 12 months with an invoice.
Looking like Stevie Wonder had designed it.
Yeah. Or so just to me, it's how do you spoon feed this information to, let's paint the picture of the business owner who's already busy running a business and the website. They're not going to spend 10 minutes pouring through Google Analytics, looking at conversion rates and time on page. It's, here are your top 5 pages that were viewed. Here are the number of reviews they've had.
Yeah.
Here's the average amount of time people are spending on your website.
Yeah.
That is all I feel like I can do. It's like, that information is useful.
Yes.
If you choose that you want to take action on the basis of that information, that's cool. Yes. There are many options for us to look at here. But let's first of all, as I started this conversation, seek first to understand. So you now understand a little bit more about what's happening on your website, and you can maybe make some better informed decisions on the basis of that about how is your website working?
Yes.
And if it is working, well, what is it that's working? Like, are people looking at your product pages?
Yeah.
That new product we launched last week, there's no traction. We did a Facebook campaign last week. Oh, we can see, because I send out the top 5 sources of traffic.
Yeah.
Facebook is our second biggest source of traffic after Google. It never used to be a source of traffic. We can see we've had 200 clicks from Facebook.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not going to go into any more detail in the initial report, but at every stage, shoot me an email, call me. We can dig deeper into that Facebook data if you want. How long are those people spending on the website? Are they going to secondary pages? Whatever.
Yeah.
So your website is working or not working, and you can see at a very basic
how
level
it's working. Yeah. And for those of you that haven't heard about Google Analytics yet, it's a free tool. So like, you literally just can speak to your web developer, or you can Google Analytics and follow the instructions to set it up and link it to your website. It's free. It's crazy not to use it because it does give you so much insight. And we'll need to wrap this up, but even though I'm loving discussing all the intricacies of websites, because I do love what they can do for a business. So if someone actually wants to start kind of really thinking about how they plan for their website before they hit the developer up, do you know, like, what kind of resources? Are there books? Are there podcasts? Are there, e-guides or something that you could recommend people access, just to kind of really try and get them thinking about the strategic considerations that we've covered, and anything else that we haven't covered, so that they can put that brief together and make sure that they get a decent website?
Yeah, there are. And this isn't to blow smoke, but when you released your book, I immediately skipped to the chapter about websites.
Yeah.
So like, kind of almost like, I hope she's saying the same things that I think about websites, and everything that you had written in that is exactly on point.
Right.
So I would recommend your book.
Oh, woohoo!
But I would also
recommend.
Yeah. Get it now. I would also recommend Donald Miller's Building a Story Brand.
Yes.
He talks a fair bit about websites in that, and he's got a second book that I bought, but the name escapes me. But his perspective is pretty solid. In terms of resources, like, I suppose that my expertise has been built up over a couple of decades at this stage, so I don't have particular resources that I go to, because I'm taking in incremental
You're more
information.
Qualified. Yep.
On my blog, I try and talk more about things like bounce rates, whether or not you should have a website, all of these sorts of things, and I'm speaking to small business owners in those blog posts. So that I feel like there's probably half a dozen posts there that would be useful.
Nice.
I think really, to me, the conversation is a conversation to have with your web developer, and just covertly trying to ping them on questions beyond just the technical build of a website. Like, ask them what do they feel about the quality of the copy on the website and the messaging, and just, because it's not always the case that they know how to do that. Like, I don't produce, I'm a relatively articulate person, but I can produce website copy, and I have done in the past, but I outsource that now to copywriters, because it's just not my core skill set.
Not your lane. Yeah.
Yeah, and I could do it, and I could save myself a few $100s by doing that and make a bit more money. But for me, the scalability and the efficacy of outsourcing that is good. So even, there are heaps, and maybe it's just the way I've network on LinkedIn, but there are dozens of really good copywriters all over LinkedIn. And I actually think that making sure that your web copy is on point is, to me, that's at least 40% of the value of a website is
100%.
in the. And I hope my copywriter isn't listening to this, because she doesn't get paid 40% of what I charge. Maybe she does. Maybe she does, actually. But I think it's important to get the messaging right. And if your web developer is not capable of doing that, which, no offense to the web developers that aren't capable of doing that, but if they don't, if they're doing it anyway,
if you're not capable of it, don't do it.
Don't do it.
Pisses me off to no end when people tell me that they can do something and then clearly they can't. They've just said that they can do it because, they want the cash. And I think all small businesses are like that. Like, just give me the expertise that you can give me. And for the stuff that you can't, point me in the direction of someone that I can work with, because we all just want the best result that we can give. So to wrap this up, Ollie, tell us, where can people find that beautiful blog of yours that you were talking about, or can they follow you on social media? Where can people find you?
I spend most of my time social media wise on LinkedIn these days.
So Oliver Brooke. What are they looking for?
Yeah, Oliver Brooke.
Oliver Brooke. And Brooke with an E.
Yeah.
Yep. LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, and then my website obviously is cloudconcepts.com.au, which is where my blog is. I spend a little bit of time on Instagram, but generally I find that it's not where my people are.
Yep.
But yeah, that's really, LinkedIn is where I output most of my content. That's where I've sort of dropped the ball a little bit on video output lately, but I've got a few lined up to put up after this.
Cool.
And just, I honestly, I think LinkedIn, like, this is almost an entirely different conversation, but LinkedIn as a resource for small business owners.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to waste time on social media, do it on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Well, Ollie, you'll be pleased to know, and I hope you listen out for the episode that we have coming up with Lucy Bingle, who is a LinkedIn expert. And she'll be running us all through how to get active on LinkedIn, because I 100% agree with you. That's where I spend the most time. It's where I get the most value. Thank you so much, Ollie. It's been great catching up with you Friday afternoon as we're recording this. What a great way to spend it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much for having me.
No worries. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of How to Do Marketing with Ollie Brooke from Cloud Concepts. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating or review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Screenshot the episode and send it to the other small business owners who you think might enjoy it. And you can find me on Facebook at Dragonfly Marketing, Instagram at Dragonfly_marketing, and on LinkedIn, just search for Jane Hilsden.
You've been listening to another Morgan Media production.